Good evening and welcome to the July 19th, 2023 meeting of the Roseville City Council. Call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Bernasconi is excused for tonight. Councilmember Alvord.
Here.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Here.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Here.
And Mayor Haldeshelt.
Here, thank you. To lead us in the pledge tonight, I've asked the Hearts for Heroes team and their comfort dogs to, if you could come up this way, bring Blaze, and who else do we have here tonight? Ash, Blaze, Boots, my favorite one.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we'll have a presentation a little later this evening from Boots, Ash, and Blaze, or their handlers. So, thank you. I'm going to ask the clerk to announce the meeting procedures.
Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Roseville. Tonight, agendas are available at the end of the staff table to your right, and they are also available online on the city's website. All comments from the public should be directed to the City Council and not to any staff member or the audience. All speakers must speak from the podium as this meeting is being recorded. For comments on non-agendized items, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any item not listed on tonight's agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Public comments on non-agenda items will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The collective initial period for public comment is limited to 25 minutes. Any speaker that did not have the opportunity to speak during this segment due to the time limitation will be able to speak at the end of the meeting just prior to council comments. As a reminder, the Brown Act does prohibit our City Council from taking action, debating, or discussing items not listed on tonight's agenda. For comments on agendized items, speakers will have 5 minutes to provide input and should be relevant to the items appearing on the agenda. Time will be monitored, and once the red light begins to blink at the podium, we request that the speaker please conclude their comments. Lastly, if addressing the City Council tonight, please consider stating your name for the record. We thank you for your civic participation tonight, and welcome to the City of Roseville.
Great, and as we do often, if there are a lot of folks who are speaking on an agenda item, we may adjust the time for individual speakers, but we'll when we get to that. And as we do at each of our council meetings, as the clerk mentioned, we begin by having a period of time in which the public can comment on non-agenda items. So do we have, I think we have John Freitas, subject E newsletter. John, you want to?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I am John Freitas. I'm a resident of Roseville for 23 years, and I have both a comment and a question. My comment is, we all have heard the phrase, a picture can describe 1,000 words, but the view of our community has a troubling issue as a root cause that needs to be addressed. That's my comment. My question is, who is the responsible party for issuing the aerial spray over West Roseville for the West Nile mosquito outbreak? I happened to witness a plane flying over on the 5th of July. I then made notice that it was flying low and slow. I came indoors. I went online. I happened to address the e-newsletter on my email, and it identified that at 8:30 there would be an aerial flyover in West Roseville for a West Nile. It was dated with July 5th at 7:31, and it said the aerial would start at 8:30. That's less, or it's an hour window of notice to the community. Just didn't seem right. When you go to the Placer County Vector Control, it too had the current date of July 5th showing the bird with the detection of the West Nile, and it was saying that immediate notice would be provided. I don't think 1 hour by an email notice is sufficient. More troubling, as I prepared for tonight, I wanted to go back to the newsletter. Poof, it's gone. I called Public Affairs. We don't keep a public depository for you to access. Fortunately, I printed what I saw, so I have a hard copy. Who called the aerial spray? That's it. Will you respond, or?
Thank you, John. I can, Mr. City Manager, I can respond to part of it, but not all of it.
Or have them talk to somebody else.
Well, being it's not an agendized item, we can't respond to it, but certainly we can get you that information. We get it for you tonight. Assistant City Manager Dion Louthan can get you the contact. It's the county.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, John. Any other comments on non-agenda items?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Robert Hipwell, retired Brigadier General in the United States Army. I'm also here on behalf of the Placer Veterans Standout. I have a pretty long letter. In the interest of time, I'll just condense the letter down to a couple of paragraphs. As you may know, since you helped fund us, we had a very successful stand down in the first week of May this year over at the fairgrounds. So on behalf of the Placer Veterans Stand Down Board of Directors, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to the City of Roseville, their exceptional support in making our 2023 Stand Down a resounding success. Your generous contributions and unwavering dedication played a vital role in ensuring the event's tremendous impact to our veteran community. And in closing, I'll go to the end. Once again, we express our deepest appreciation to the City of Roseville. Their generosity, dedication, and unwavering support, your contribution to our 2023 Stand Down has undoubtedly made a lasting difference in the lives of our local veterans and their families. We look forward to the continued collaboration between our organizations, and we strive to honor and support those who have served our nation. With my deepest and most sincere gratitude, Robert Hipwell, Brigadier General, United States Army, Chairman and CEO of the Placer Veterans Stand Down. And then additionally, we have a plaque I could leave here for the mayor and the city council, or unless I should give it to somebody.
Maybe, Dion, would you grab our Assistant City Manager, Dion Louthan?
Once again,
Thank you very much for your kind
support.
words.
It's been very much appreciated.
Thank you for what you
Thank
do.
you. Thank you for your service.
Absolutely. Anyone else, non-agenda items? Sure.
My name is Vishal Virk. I'm from the Campus Oak community. Originally, there were supposed to be about 40 people that were supposed to show up, kind of do a protest. I asked them not to, because I feel like we can probably solve things a little bit more
I'm
civil.
sorry, you're from where now?
The Campus Oak community in West Roseville.
Okay, Campus Oaks, okay, thank you.
I figure I asked everybody not to come, just a select few people, so
Okay.
we could kind of handle this in a peaceful manner. If you're from the Campus Oak community, could you please stand up?
So why are you here?
So pretty much, we bought these homes built by Lennar Homes. At the time of sale, they had showed us pictures of this park called Crimson Ridge Park, which is what I'm here to discuss. Crimson Ridge Park was a park that was promised to us at the time of purchase. A lot of our homes are patio homes without backyards. In my particular case, they sold it to me that I will not need a backyard because you're going to get this beautiful, lush park a block away from my house. As so as some of these people who have kids. Some of them brought their kids, some of them haven't. But it's a whole community of families that bought homes based on the fact that there was going to be a park built. 2 years later, there is no bark. Lennar is on the way up, about to leave their community, and they just dumped a bunch of bark and said, hey, here's your bark. The city is responsible for this, and they're just walking away from the responsibility. They're saying the city is going to take over and they're going to do it, not us. Lennar has kind of left us hanging, and we're all, quite frankly, upset about this. So this was a park that was promised at the bottom, and this is what we have right now. A lot of these patio homes are facing the park, and they're just looking at a pile of bark, and that's not fair. We've talked to Parks and Recs. They said they'll work with us on an alternative park to beautify it, but they said Lennar does not have the funds to build a park. The park's almost complete. They've got to put the lawn in, the shade structures. There was originally 16 things they were going to put in the park. All we're asking is just finish the park, just put the lawn in, and just call it a day, because their kids cannot play in those parks. It's nothing but bark, dirt. Also, there's these African roaches that lay eggs in bark, so the community in no time is going to be overrun by cockroaches. It's just not fair. Like, we shouldn't have to. Some of us went over our budget just to say, hey, that's going to be a nice feature. We'll go ahead and pay extra to live here because of that park. Now, we understand you guys are building a 6-acre park, trails. We understand that. But that park was important to a lot of us. The fact that Lennar is pushing it on the city saying, hey, they're saying that we can go ahead and dump this and walk away is not fair. As far as I know, they didn't even have that approved. This park was what was approved, not the bark that they dumped there. And we're not getting any answers from anybody, and we just want your help to get this park completed before Lennar takes off, and we're left with nothing.
Well, I will take a personal interest in this one.
Yeah. And just one more thing. A lot of the neighbors that live there, their English is a second language, or they're first generation immigrants, or they're new immigrants. So some of them didn't come because they couldn't speak the language, or they were shy, or they didn't want. But they're feeling like they're being taken advantage of because of their language barrier. Which I said I don't think that's true, but that's how people feel. And then a lot of people are already talking about getting the media involved, voting this current council out. So I'm just here trying to make it work for all of us, where we don't have to go through all this, and we just get our park. And that's all we want.
So you may have talked to Jill Geller, but they may have not met Jill Geller. Would you raise your hand, Jill Geller? She's our Parks and Rec Director. If you meet out in the foyer, she'll talk with you, and I'm going to take a personal interest in this one.
Yeah, no, we love this city. We came here because we moved here because it was like the city of parks.
Yep.
Every 10 minutes, there's going to be a park within walking distance. We specifically changed everything. I took a pay cut just to be in Roseville, so I expect a lot from you guys.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. Yeah, we're pretty proud of our parks. We'll get to the bottom of this. Meet Jill outside. Thank you.
Say something. I'm AJ, same resident,
Yeah.
Campus Oaks. So Lennar is saying they don't have enough funds, right? Their second quarter earnings were 8.06% up, and the third quarter is expected 4% up. So I don't know where are the funds, so we can question Lennar. Thanks.
Okay.
I'd also like to add, I'm Dr. Sean Badal. I'm a resident of Campus Oaks as well, and I just wanted to highlight that Lennar is a company with a market cap of almost $42 billion. Last year, in 2022, they spent almost over $900 million in share buybacks for their investors. This year, in the first quarter alone, they spent $189 million on share buybacks. I've talked to general contractor friends. This park, adding grass and sprinklers, would be way below $50,000. This is a rounding error for a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So it's totally unacceptable for them not to finish the park that was promised to us. And I'd like to see what type of action the city is going to take to ensure that Lennar pays for this park and completes this park. Furthermore, the park that they did install is subpar. They did not put any weed barrier to the bark that they planted, so the entire park will be overrun with weeds. In fact, if you visit Campus Oaks now, you'll see that majority of the landscaping is overrun with weeds as it is. And they've installed the smallest and cheapest plants possible, so we won't see any type of residual growth or anything for years, and this hurts our property values in the long run. So I think hopefully the city can put some pressure on Lennar as a corporation, since they are continually building in Roseville, and they are taking out permits to continue construction at other sites, and we'll see hopefully that they can be pressured into something where they actually fulfill the commitments that they made to us.
Okay, thank you. We'll meet you outside,
Meet you outside.
and thank you.
Council?
Is this on the same topic or a different?
Same topic, just two seconds.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm an investor. I bought 5 of these homes in that community, 2 of them right on the strip that they promised this park. And one of the biggest selling points was how beautiful this park was, and they sent me a PDF with 13 amenities that would be there. And, you know, they are the second largest builder in the United States, and 56 billion or something last year. So they should be held accountable.
I'm looking for a familiar face in the crowd that I don't see who brought this to my attention maybe 6 weeks ago, so I drove by and couldn't believe, I couldn't believe that was the end product. So we'll get on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Also, one more. We'll have
Yeah.
from the same community. My name is Roman Golis, and we bought a property there in 2021. Also promised a park. Now we have two young boys, and this guy, Luca, he's not even 4 yet. But when we walk past that park, he says, I don't want to go to the fake park. Let's go to a real one. Because he can figure out what a real park looks like and what we got. So I appreciate you taking the time to put some pressure on what was promised to us. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Are there others who want to comment on non-agenda items? Hey, if,
She's also from the community.
we'll give folks a moment to get outside. While they are heading outside, I'll ask the city clerk to announce the procedures for the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All matters on consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be approved by one motion of the City Council. There will be no discussion on consent calendar items unless a member of the City Council, the staff, or a member of the public requests that a specific item be pulled for further discussion. At this time, neither council or staff has made such request. Is there any member of the public that would like to pull an item for further discussion tonight? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Mayor. On consent for the City Council consideration, we have items 6.1 through 6.18. At this time, may I have a motion to approve those items?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor with a second. We'll start a roll call with Vice Mayor Bernasconi, who's excused. Councilmember Elverd.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Cucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Haldeshell.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, as promised, our next item is a resolution, 7.1, the Fire Department Comfort Canine Paw Platoon, there's enough Ps in this one, Paw Platoon Placement Program, Memorandum of Understanding, and a side letter. And we have as Chief Barty and Division Chief Matthew Lochner.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you said, I'm Rick Barty, the Fire Chief for the City of Roseville, and I do have with me Division Chief Matt Lochner. As you guys all remember, I came here with 34 years in the fire service, and I was blessed to have a labor representative my first month getting here who understood what I understood after 34 years, the need for resources for first responders to have to deal with any kind of emotional or mental wellness as they work through their careers. And I've seen a lot of traumatic events, and these folks see a lot of traumatic events on a regular basis, not only here, but in their personal lives. So with that being said, we had an opportunity now to increase our resources for that, to help our members get through those problems or issues that they have, and Matt's going to talk a little bit about that for us.
Good morning, Mayor Howard Sheldon, Council, Matt Lochner, Division Chief, Roseville
Not
Fire.
morning yet, though.
Good afternoon, evening, how about
Evening.
that?
All right, we'll go
Yeah.
with that. All right.
I'd just like to talk a little bit about Hearts for Heroes Foundation and our partnership that we're proposing to the council today. For many first responders, as Chief Barty said, critical incidents can be extremely taxing on their mental health. The number of critical incidents, not only in Roseville, but around the country, are rising faster than ever, and post-traumatic stress disorder is highest it's been in decades. There are a number of well-documented studies out there that show the relationship between service animals and veterans, and how that relationship has lowered incidents of suicide and PTSD. So Blaze, which is over there with Dan, he's the light-colored dog over there, will assist in activities and join our fire's peer support and critical stress management team to provide our firefighters with improved mental health and well-being support system. Hearts for Heroes is a nonprofit that provides comfort canines as resources to support the mental health and well-being of first responders. Hearts for Heroes will cover all expenses, including training, medical expenses, grooming, food, etc. So with that being said, I'd like to invite Shelley Martell from Hearts for Heroes up to the podium to speak a little bit on their organization.
And thank you all so much for us. It's an honor to be here for our first responder families in solidarity to those on the front line. I am grateful to the city of Roseville for acknowledging your first responders, that there is a need, and the need is growing, and we're just very grateful to be a part of that. Blaze has done some amazing work. Excuse me, I get emotional. Dan has been a true rock star in taking all of the training and doing what he needs to do to be able to implement the therapy dog program of our Paw Platoon Placement Program. All of our divisions that are here tonight, our Firefighter Burn Institute with Joe Pick and Boots, they represent a huge growth in what needs to happen for our civilians and our firefighters that have been injured in a burn, and it's just been phenomenal for us to be able to see this and pay it forward to those first responders. Brett and Ash at the Rescue Fire Department, again, have been rock stars in doing all the clinician work that needs to happen for them to be safe and to help them in a time of need. We're just grateful to be here and to have a wonderful partnership with Roseville. We're very grateful for them stepping up and realizing that this needs to happen. And we're super excited to work with all of you and for you to be able to see the work that Blaze is going to be doing in your community. Not just for the firefighters, but everybody in this room will benefit from what Blaze gets to do in your community. So I thank you for this opportunity tonight, and we look forward to a very long relationship with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any
Thank you,
questions?
Shelley.
Shelley.
Okay.
So as Shelley had mentioned, Dan has been working with Blaze now for close to a year as his dog as a volunteer. So it was actually, Blaze was working through Hearts for Heroes as a volunteer and got to know Dan and Blaze together, and then we've actually had an opportunity to use them here recently with the Mahaney shooting incident that we had there. So there's been a lot of uses already, and we're well prepared to add this to our fleet of assets as far as mental health and wellness for our firefighters. So with that being said, in the last slide, the fiscal impact for Blaze will be absorbed by the fire department's normal operating budget. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution to approve the MOU between the City of Roseville and Hearts for Heroes.
Thank you, Chief. I'll ask the council if they have any questions.
Not a question, just a comment. When I was working at Mercy Hospital Dignity Health, we had support dogs that came and visited, and it made a tremendous difference to my patients and to the staff. It just brightened them up, and again, like I said, you're going through stresses, whether you're a patient or something's happening, just an opportunity of having a lighter moment and taking a breath makes a big difference. So I'm really very supportive and happy to have you here.
Councilman Donza, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Councilman Albert?
Yeah, I was wondering, I asked some questions outside of this before when I first met Blaze, and I was curious if you were Wondering if you would mind explaining how Blaze actually functions. Can you describe the situation and how Blaze serves and what that looks like?
I can do that. And as you guys all know, I do travel the country and have traveled to many other disasters across the country. And one of them I will point to just real quickly would be the Champaign Towers collapse in Miami. We had over 800 first responders there. At one time, we had over 20 comfort dogs who, on a 24-hour period, who came around and just was there for firefighters, for them, a place for them to have somebody who they could just go to, hug, pet, who gave them love just unconditionally. One way we would have it also would be like when we do our incident stress debriefings, which we do for our firefighters after particular events, as a dog or the canine will just be there. And then they'll have the opportunity just to have them around. And throughout the day, this Blaze will actually stay at Station 6 with Dan when Dan comes to work and has that opportunity to bring them to incidents or just to other stations just to say hello, because decompressing throughout the day has to happen, not just after a traumatic event. Because I always say is what you bring to work is just as bad sometimes as what you see at work. And so there's folks who come to work that have some issues already that need to deal with. So Blaze has that ability to have that comfort for them and be part of that.
Thank you.
All right, simple question. Blaze is what breed of dog? I was going to say, all right, and Ash is what breed of dog?
Bernedoodle.
And Boots?
Boots is a Labradoodle.
We got a lot of doodling going on here. All right. Yeah. Anyway, I'll open it for public comment. If there's any public comment. And seeing none, I'll close public comment and ask the council if they have any additional questions or comments. And I'll ask the clerk to read the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On item 7.1, the City Council will consider adopting Resolution Number 23-305, approving a memorandum of understanding by and between the City of Roseville and Hearts for Heroes USA, and authorizing the city manager to execute it on behalf of the City of Roseville, and adopting Resolution Number 23-306, approving a side letter agreement to the Master Memorandum of Understanding for employees represented by the Roseville Firefighters Local 1592, and authorizing the city manager to execute it on behalf of the City of Roseville. At this time, I have a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor with the second. Again, the record reflect that Vice Mayor Bernasconi has been excused. Councilmember Alvord?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
And Mayor Haudashelt.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to stay? We're going to be here for a while. All right?
Picture.
Or you can, or Ash.
A picture, let's do a picture in front. Let's do a picture with them.
That'd be, thank you, Council, yeah. Who wouldn't love a picture?
with the
I might
dog.
need some comfort right now. I mean,
Let's get you guys back as close to the desk as possible.
Like a bigger version of my
what are the rules of engagement?
You guys are ready? All right, you guys all look here. Look right. We'll go in the middle first. Puppies. Oops. Babies. Uh-oh.
Hang on, 1, 2.
Ash. Ashley.
Good.
Uh-oh. Under her purse, under her dress.
Oh.
Tail going.
We're told to get an engineering comfort dog department. From an everyday for everyone. It really help relax me. I know that.
Wouldn't hurt.
Just have them roam around the office.
Comes in, get to pet his belly. Everyone has some treats. Yeah. I think we gotta talk to Mike about it.
Got one when I get home.
That one's Blaze, right? The big one right here? This one here.
Oh, this one right here? Oh, wow.
Only one of them ours.
That comment was like that?
And I was just going to say, in all of the years, and Councilman Alvord, you've been here since 2016, there are these moments, right? They're just so much reflective of this community, right? And so much the quality and the care that this community has for each other. So that's one of those moments.
I do think, though, that we should have asked Blaze to come sit in the empty chair. Might be useful tonight.
All righty, we're going to go now to our next item, which is a public hearing. It is on the North Roseville Specific Plan, parcel WW-40, paren 1751 Pleasant Grove Boulevard, and paren Grocery Outlet Design Review Permit and tentative parcel map appeal. And before I forget to do this, I'm going to open the public hearing, and I'm asked the city clerk to make the announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we'd like the record to reflect that additional documents and email comments were recently added as an attachment online to Agenda Item 8.1, as they were received after the posting of the agenda and prior to tonight's meeting. Copies are available at the end of the staff table for members of the public present here tonight. In addition, a video was also submitted. However, due to software incompatibility, it was not able to upload. So any member of the public wishing to view the video may contact the city clerk's office to receive a copy. With that, Mr. Mayor, we want to thank you for the opportunity to let the folks know what is going on with item 8.1.
Great, thanks. And we'll start with staff's presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Hadshelt, members of the City Council. I'm Greg Bitter, Planning Manager with your Development Services Department. And tonight, for this presentation and throughout the hearing, I'm going to be here supported with Derek Ogden, our Senior Planner, Sean Morales, Associate Planner, and Mark Stout, the City Engineer. With that, I'm just going to turn it straight over to Sean so he can go through the presentation, and then the four of us will be here for any questions that you have.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be presenting the appeal, and I think we can just go into the second slide.
Can you speak up, please?
Oh, I got the mic here. That's a better height. Okay. The project site is located at 1751 Pleasant Grove Boulevard and is parcel WW-40 in the North Roseville Specific Plan. The site is approximately 3.1 acres in size and has a zoning and land use designation of community commercial. It is surrounded by the Paseo del Norte single-family residential subdivision to the east, wetland preserve to the south, an existing CVS to the west, and an undeveloped commercial parcel to the north. The applicant requests a design review permit to allow the construction of a 16,000 square foot grocery building, as well as a 4,600 square foot freestanding pad building, and a tentative parcel map is also requested to subdivide the existing parcel into 3 lots. The grocery and pad buildings on parcels 1 and 2 will be developed in one phase. Parcel 3 will be developed at a later time and is not proposed for development. There are 3 driveways that serve the site, and a traffic study was completed to evaluate access and circulation. Based on the study and staff review, the applicant was required to make modifications such as adding striping, installing a gull wing on Pleasant Grove, and lengthening the left turn lane on Pleasant Grove. A speed bump is required to be constructed on the eastern boundary adjacent to Camino Real Way to help deter commercial customers from using that private HOA road. For ingress and egress, signage is also required to alert customers that it is a private road. Consistent with the community design guidelines, a 6-foot masonry wall is required along the eastern boundary to provide a visual and noise buffer to the residents to the east, as well as on the southern boundary along the loading dock for additional visual and noise buffering. At the Planning Commission hearing, condition of approval 69 was added to allow the potential for emergency access bollards to be installed at the entrance to the private HOA road. The applicant and staff held 2 neighborhood meetings for this project on February 13th and March 2nd. A 3rd meeting was also held with the HOA president on April 13th. Notice of the Planning Commission hearing was sent to property owners within 300 feet, and a list of interested individuals, as well as posted on the Arcona website and in the Press Tribune. And staff received 3 public comment letters in response to the notice, including one from the appellant tonight. The The project was heard at the May 11th Planning Commission meeting, and 3 individuals provided testimony during the hearing. The appellant was not present at the hearing. Much of the discussion was around restricting access for commercial users to Camino Real Way. In response to the comments, the commission added condition of approval 69 as mentioned, which required that the applicant work in good faith with the HOA to install emergency access bollards at the entrance to Camino Real Way. The commission found the proposal to be exempt from CEQA review as an infill development project meeting the 5 criteria shown on the screen, and the item was approved in a 6-0 vote with 1 commissioner absent. On May 17th, the city received an appeal of the commission's decision from Donald B. Mooney, representing Protect Our Roseville Neighborhoods. The appeal letter alleged the project is not eligible for an infill exemption due to potential traffic and noise impacts. Additionally, the appeal alleges the commission stripped the HOA of easement rights. I'll discuss each of these issues in the following slides. In addition to the appeal form, staff received a letter just yesterday with additional comments from the appellant that I will also summarize. First, the appellant asserts the project may have potentially significant traffic impacts caused by a drive-through on parcel 3. This comment was also brought up before the commission hearing, and staff provided a response memo at that time. In fact, parcel 3 is not planned for development, as discussed, and the applicant initially proposed a drive-through use, which staff did not support due to impacts on neighboring residences, so was removed from the project. Because it was already part of the traffic study, the drive-through remained in the study for the site as a worst-case scenario to ensure that some future development would be able to be accommodated on parcel 3. Next, the appellant asserts the project may have potentially significant noise impacts caused by drive-through use on parcel 3. As with the traffic comment, this was brought up before the commission hearing and addressed in staff memo. Once again, parcel 3 is not planned for development. The project noise study did include the initially proposed drive-through because the study was still applicable and usable for grocery outlet and the pad buildings. In the study, no noise mitigation was recommended for those 2 buildings. Despite this, consistent with the community design guidelines, staff required 6-foot masonry sound walls, as I previously mentioned, to be installed on the eastern property line and adjacent to the loading dock, which goes above and beyond any requirements of the noise study. The appellant asserts condition 69, which was added at the commission hearing, requires the HOA to give up its property rights. On the contrary, the condition was added in order to provide flexibility for the HOA to control its easement rights. The existing easement allows for Paseo del Norte residents to use the commercial property for ingress and egress. However, at the neighborhood meetings and in public comments, some residents wished to completely block the road so that no grocery or other commercial users could access the road. The condition requires that the applicant work with the HOA to install bollards restricting access to the road if the HOA takes the steps necessary to make that a possibility on their end. If no bollards are installed, the speed bump and signage I previously mentioned will be used. Lastly, the appellant sent a letter yesterday afternoon addressed to City Council. Staff wrote a response memo that was distributed to Council, posted on the city website. The letter brings up 5 topics seen here, and I will summarize our response to each. The appellant states the review is being piecemealed to bypass CEQA by not reviewing potential development on parcel 3. However, there is no development proposed for parcel 3 and no reasonably foreseeable development to review under CEQA. The appellant states the project has been described inconsistently, leading to confusion of what is proposed. The project description has remained consistent throughout the process. The only item that has not already been extensively addressed by staff is the erroneous reference to a QSR or quick serve restaurant in one of the conditions for the design review permit that was left over from an early review by one of our city staff. While this clearly does not rise to the level of an inconsistent project description, staff does recommend that the council amend the condition of approval to strike the reference to the QSR, just for clarity. The appellant also claims the infill exemption is not appropriate when the project clearly meets the 5 criteria that I listed earlier. The appellant also claims there are unusual circumstances with the project, citing in particular a drive-through restaurant, which is not proposed with the project. And finally, the appellant claims again the HOA is being stripped of easement rights. On the contrary, the speed bump signage and potential bollards are at the burden of the applicant and service of the HOA, which is otherwise has the responsibility of enforcing their easement. So in conclusion, staff finds the proposed grocery outlet project is consistent with the policies and intent of the general plan, specific plan, and the community design guidelines, and the required findings for the requested entitlements can be made, and the project meets the 5 criteria for an infill exemption under CEQA. Furthermore, as discussed, the issues raised in the appeal of the Planning Commission's decision as well as the subsequent letter are not valid. Therefore, staff recommends the council take the actions as listed on the slide and also include the modified condition 4 in the design review permit to strike the reference to a quick serve restaurant. And I'm available for any questions.
Before we hear from the applicant, Councilman Albert, any questions?
And I read the material and appreciate your response. It's unfortunate it's always late, right before the council meeting, seems like, but I'm going to reserve questions till after I hear the rest of it.
Councilwoman Rakucci?
Just a comment that I drove in the neighborhood today twice, and just to kind of get a feel of what it was like. So a sense of being at where the grocery store is, driving down your center, that you have a roundabout there, and how the traffic patterning is there.
Okay. Councilmember Mendoza?
I also went out and drove the area, but I will reserve any more comments or questions until we hear from the applicants.
As will I, and so we'll hear from the applicant, Interstate Cal Real Estate Corporation. Here this evening. Good evening.
Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Chuck Trainer. I'm with the law firm of Trainer Fairbrook in Sacramento. I have the honor of representing Intercal Real Estate now for over 40 years. So I know them well, and I know the quality of projects that they do. You're probably familiar most with the Fountains Project, which the Bollinger family, which is Intercal Real Estate, built in your city, and is a beautiful amenity for all of us to go to and enjoy. It may be hard as an attorney to be as brief as possible in this circumstance, but I'll try my darndest. I wore my Tour de France tie today, too, for any of you who might also
Maillot
be
jaune, okay. Yeah, I neglected to say you have 10 minutes, so.
I know. No, I'm going to be much short of that, Mr. Mayor.
Well, there's.
This property in 1997 was part of the North Roseville specific plan. It was approved. At that time, the zoning was community commercial. It remains community commercial. The zoning hasn't changed. The Bollinger family bought the property in 2001, and in 2006, they sold it to K. Hovanian Homes. That's where the easement is coming from. They sold part of it. They sold parcel 41, I'm sorry. They kept parcel 40. Parcel 41 went to K. Hovanian Homes. That's where the easement we're talking about came from, because for fire purposes, the developer needed access and ingress and egress for emergency vehicles out both ends of the center of their development. And so they have the roundabout in the center with their street, and they have ingress and egress at both ends of the property. Our client has no objection to continuing that easement. The Planning Commission put a condition in that worked out between staff and the Planning Commission. I don't think either the HOA or the developer had much input on that condition, but we have no concern with the easement staying there for people to have ingress and egress through the shopping center drive aisles, right where the easement is now, out to Pleasant Grove Boulevard. In 2010, our client built the CVS project, and this property, of course, has remained undeveloped until now. On May 11th, as staff indicated, it was approved. Our client meets the specific plan requirements, meets the zoning requirements, meets the design guideline requirements. It's done additional amenities requested by the staff to lessen the impact on the adjacent homeowners. And so at this point in time, they felt they had met everything. Then, as you know, then the letters started coming in with respect to the appeals. The first letter arrived, as mentioned, on the day of the Planning Commission hearing, and it raised CEQA concerns. We did not have an opportunity at that time to address the CEQA items directly, but they were discussed, of course, during the Planning Commission hearing. We subsequently got the appeal that came in that letter. It was almost entirely based upon the fact it would be a fast food, ultra brand, quick serve restaurant on parcel 3. As you'll see in attachment 10, my response to that was in virtually every single case. There simply was no basis for what they said because it was all based on the quick service restaurant, which we, of course, we did not have on the plan. It was deleted from the plan. So after that, we thought we'd be hearing something more. We've heard nothing until the letter came in yesterday. that reiterated a significant number of these same items, but it really boils down to three issues. The first issue is that it doesn't qualify for the infill exemption. I don't know what project you could do with a remainder parcel where there's no development on it and break up a tentative map if you had to describe what was going on with the future development. You don't know what you're going to develop or what it's going to be. Also, it goes on to say that because we have extra parking places for grocery outlet has somehow we're planning for the developing of parcel 3 because grocery outlet would like lots of parking spaces for its customers. There's just there's no basis for the fact that this infill exemption doesn't qualify for this. There's no plan to develop parcel 3. Our client has no idea what they're going to do with parcel 3. The city was very clear, and Mr. Bitter was very clear during the Planning Commission hearing, that they absolutely were not going to recommend to you, with any conditions, a quick service, fast drive-through restaurant on that location next to the residences. You've been down that road before, and you know where it leads. And the city said, we're not going to do it. Mr. Bollinger pulled that from the project, and there is no plan for that now. There's no tenant for that site. There's no plan for development. The second issue was really related, which is the quick fill. He, to this point, in his letter, and it's somewhat insulting to the city staff because it has this conspiratorial effect in the letter that he says that the city staff, in an effort to avoid the infill exemption, removed the parcel 3 development. The city staff didn't do that at all. The city staff told us in January that we are not going to approve a drive-through restaurant right next to the residences. They go on to say that because the proposed use would require a conditional use permit, that they went on to, it wouldn't qualify as a infill exemption, and so for that reason we elected not to do develop parcel 3, which is a little inconsistent with his statement that we, by not developing that, we were not qualifying for the exemption. So, and then I could go on. I don't think you read this letter. I don't need to repeat it over and over, but it talks about the city staff somehow nefariously trying to write the staff report in such a manner that the infill exemption applies when it shouldn't. And the third item is the HOA, the Homeowners Association. The Homeowners Association has a recorded easement through our client's property for ingress and egress to their parcel. And that is, we have no right to go onto their property. Nobody from our property has a right to go onto their property. Never has been. We're not in the position where, as the developer, I just don't see the nexus between us trying to protect their easement, and there's no easement onto their property. We don't have an easement onto their property, so I don't understand what nexus would be there for us being required to build anything or do anything on their property. The client has agreed to put in the speed bump and the signage, which was suggested by city staff. So we're prepared to do that. This planning commission put in if the HOA would like, they can put in bollards instead. And they added the condition, as I mentioned when I started, they would have to give up the easement to our property. I don't think the easement would be usable anymore for them, basically, if they put up the bollards, but we don't care legally if they have it. Candidly, we'd love all those people to shop at Grocery Outlet and CVS and not have to go out on Pleasant Grove or around. So we have no objection for them continuing to use that. So we were hoping that after the Planning Commission hearing, we would hear from the HOA. We haven't heard from the HOA. The city hasn't heard from the HOA. We don't know that the HOA they're now part of this latest appeal in this letter that came in yesterday. Suddenly, they're also part of appealing this. So I don't know exactly where we stand with the HOA or who the spokesman is for the HOA, or if the HOA has had meetings and made decisions. We don't know. we're here, ready to talk to them. We're, as I indicated, Bollingers have been through dozens of these projects, and they've met with homeowners dozens and dozens of times, and they know what we can do to try and work with the homeowners to make it have a successful relationship. The last thing they want, or we want, is for them to have some angst against Grocery Outlet on our tenant there. So we're hoping that we can reach a resolution of some type with them that makes both practical and economic sense. So that's my presentation. We have here the architect for the project, if you have any of those questions. We have representatives from Grocery Outlet who are here. And we also have Mr. Bollinger, who missed the Planning Commission hearing because he was having his knee replaced. And he's up and around now with a cane. But if we have questions, we're here to answer them. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members.
Thank you, Mr. Trainer. Next, we'll hear from the appellant. Wait 1 second. We want to clear the clock. You'll have the same 10 minutes as the applicant did. And your name is?
My name is Donald Mooney. I'm an attorney representing the appellant.
Who is the appellant?
The appellant is Protect Roseville Neighborhood.
Who is that?
Who's that?
Who is it? Who is that?
Who is that?
Who is that? They are individuals within that nearby community, but at this point, they did not want, I don't have a name to give you.
So they are, and
They are residents of
we'll
Roseville.
reset the clock, but they're different than the HOA?
Different than the HOA, yes.
But they reside in the HOA.
I believe some of them do, yes.
So why didn't the HOA just come in?
Yeah.
Why didn't the
We'll
HOA
let
come
him-
forward instead of forming
Yeah,
a group?
let's let the appellant have his time, and then we'll ask questions later.
So yes, I did send a letter, it's often my practice to send letters after I see the staff report, because then I just send a second letter after the staff report, and that's why, and I sometimes, folks, petitioners, attorneys like myself, we often get accused of sending things late, but we want to see all the information that's being presented and then respond to that, and so that's one reason the letter comes in shortly after the staff report. And I do want to focus on the things that in my letter that went to you yesterday about the inconsistencies of the project description. When you do read the staff report, there are references to that the parcel 3 will be developed. There's references to that is the project site, and then it carves out parcel 3 and says it'll be developed at a later time. But this project, as it's going in, as I indicated in my letter, it's going in to support the development of parcel 3. So there should be some environmental review, and I was not accusing the staff of being conspiratorial, contrary to what council had said, but I do think what was said at the Planning Commission meeting, that was pulled because they didn't see how it could work, and without issuing a conditional use permit. And it was my understanding from reviewing the Planning Commission meeting that it probably wouldn't have qualified for an infill exemption. So with that, then what it ends up being is that you have taken a project that was proposed, said, well, it's not going to meet those CEQA requirements, but we're going to implement the traffic recommendations that were part of that project, that were based upon part of that project being there. And then, so now we have partial environmental review of what is being proposed in the two pads, the Grocery Outlet and the pad of the 4,600 square foot pad. But all of the development now, or the changes to the traffic patterns or the traffic improvements, are being made in part to support what was going to be a quick service restaurant. So now when the quick service restaurant comes in, if in fact that's what it is, or development comes there, the impacts of that, the baseline will have changed. So now you've basically segmented this environmental review, so the cumulative impacts will be different than what they would have been under a single. And CEQA is very clear, you cannot do that. And I'm not saying staff was conspiratorial, but I don't think this is what CEQA allows. And I have been doing this for probably far too many decades at this point. So, and the issue of being reasonably foreseeable in terms of the piecemealing. Everything in that, the May 11th staff report talks about the future development there. It is reasonably foreseeable that that development's going to be there. And I understand from the memo that was issued today, it talks about that the environmental review was done there. This is already done as commercial with environmental review. That is commercial. But this is a specific parcel. And the staff report talks about it being a quick service restaurant. And then now if it's being changed, that's being taken away again, it's just more evidence from my position, from where I'm sitting, that things are being modified in order to fit it into a nice little piece, to avoid having to do analyzing the whole project. And I'm not going to just recite everything that was in my letter, and I think my letter provides lots of examples. And again, the inconsistent project description. When you look at the staff report from May 11th, it does say there's two figures where it says this is the project site that includes parcel 3. Talks about parcel 3 being developed at some point, but then it says parcel 3 is not part of the project. There's a lot of inconsistency, and then it also says parcel 3 is going to be is identified as a QSR. So if one reads that staff report, one comes away uncertain as to what is the status of parcel 3 with respect to this project. And again, CEQA's, whether it be an EIR, a notice of exemption, a mitigated neg deck, CEQA is supposed to be one of the main purposes of CEQA is to serve as an informational document, or for the documents for the information for the public and the decision makers. So when somebody reads a staff report on notice of exemption and sees what the project description is in there, they should be able to walk away with a clear understanding of what is taking place on any parcel or with the project. And I would submit to you that I think that the staff report was confusing, and I don't know if that's because there was things that got carried over when the development of parcel 3 was apparently dropped, but that stayed in the staff report or stayed in the memos that were maybe supporting the staff report. But the staff report is inconsistent in terms of how it describes the project. With respect to the easement, the concern of the HOA is that there's going to be lots of folks coming through there that are not members of the HOA that will be using that area those roads, that road through the HOA to access, to go to and from, whether it be on cars or walking or pedestrians, that they do not have that easement. So as I indicated in the letter, with the developer having the servient estate, they need to take, it's our position that they need to take some type of action to not infringe upon the easement. And if their customers or their agents, their employees are using that easement, the burden should fall upon them to pay for the gate or to install a gate that the HOA members would have access to. What you're doing here, by what's been proposed, puts the burden on the HOA to enforce their easement, and it puts the cost imposes the cost upon them to enforce that easement, or as proposed by the Planning Commission, to put up bollards and relinquish their property rights. And that is certainly not appropriate to tell private owners that have an easement, well, you need to agree to this and then relinquish your property rights. That just seems inappropriate and doesn't seem consistent with California property law. So I do have a little bit of time, but that's all I have. And if the council has any questions.
I have a question.
Oh, wait, we need to let, no, go ahead.
We good, Mayor?
I think we're good.
Okay. So I'm trying to understand, and maybe you could help me, because I have your email here, and I've read through it. So as it stands now, the residents, as far as easement go, they can come onto the commercial property, right? Is that where the easement is?
Yeah, the easement allows them to come
Allows
onto the
them to
commercial
come on.
property.
What your issue is, or not your, I'm sorry, what the HOA and the residents' issue is people from the business side of it coming onto the private, right?
Yes.
Okay. So by proposing this gate, walk me through. Is this going to be like a gate with like a remote or a keypad? Because I mean, I'm struggling. Wouldn't the gate then prevent them from coming egress
Well,
on their side?
I think the idea is that there would be a fob or a code
Okay.
that they would be able to put in, just like if you're like a security,
In here,
like
so I
you'd
was
have a
just
security
wondering
gate.
If by
going-
doing that, you're still preventing them that to and from, because the gate obviously, so it won't be a stationary gate. You're proposing something that will still let them come one
Yes.
way, but not the other people to go the other way.
Well, yeah, would allow vehicles to, the HOA members to exit and enter, but it would not allow non-residents
Either or.
to access the gate.
All right, I just got a little lost because ballards are stationary, and I just, the way I read it, the gate was also a stationary solution, so I was struggling with, doesn't that still prevent
Very end, they get to go last.
one-way traffic versus preventing egress back and forth for those particular homeowners? But you've clarified
Yeah,
that, so,
I apologize for that.
thank you.
Any other questions for the appellant?
I had one. You mentioned you said something about the concern of the HOA is basically the extra traffic coming through, but you don't represent the HOA, and so is there somebody from the HOA that represents the HOA that can speak and say that the HOA has that concern?
I actually do represent the HOA.
Okay, so you're hired by the HOA?
I've been hired by the HOA and
some other residents?
Yeah, and so it was Protect Roseville Neighborhoods that filed the appeal, and then subsequent to that, I filed that on behalf of them, and subsequent to that, the HOA had hired me as well. So that's why you have a letter, and at the first paragraph of the letter does identify that I represent them
Okay,
as well.
I misunderstood that. I thought you had said that there's just individuals.
Well,
so I was worried
because
about
this is an appeal, so I'm here on behalf of the appellant, but I do represent the HOA, and so we put that in the letter as well.
Got it. And then when I drove through there, I pretended like I was shopping and I want to get a shortcut out. So I drove through the neighborhood, went through the roundabout, got out to Pleasant Grove. I can't go left. I can only go right. And so in order to do that, I had to go through the narrow neighborhood, around the roundabout, out and out, instead of just straight out. So I'm not sure who would ever want to drive through the neighborhood, especially if you had like private property or something. And even to go the other way, I had to go down and couldn't even do a U-turn at Sun City. I had to go into Sun City and go around and come back out again. So I just didn't understand how do you see more traffic happening? 'Cause I see if somebody ever did it, they'll never do it again.
And I have driven through there, but I'm actually going to kind of defer to maybe my clients who live there that may have a better answer than that, because I'm not there. I mean, I've driven around it and looked, but
Well, that'd be something
Yeah.
at some point tonight, I'd like to hear that, because when I drove it, I just didn't, like, who in the world would want to ever do this? It's such a
and without
hard way
trying
do
to
it.
throw it to them, but I do know some of the members from the community are here and plan to provide some comments today as well. So I hate to defer that
Nope,
to you.
that's
but-
okay. So whoever comes up, I'm interested in that. So, and that's all my questions right now.
Thank you.
Actually, one more. I actually agree with Councilman Albert. I did not go into the depth of the neighborhood that he did, but I did drive through on the commercial site. So just to kind of get my bearings, because that's not my side of town. But when whoever does decide to come up, I would be anxious to hear what that what that would look like if someone, or how they feel those impacts would
Yeah.
negatively affect them. 'Cause
And one reason I don't, be very frank with you, I don't have the personal knowledge. I mean, this is a hearing, a hearing, and I don't want to represent to you like I'm testifying or somehow with regards to what are actually facts on the ground, as opposed to people who live there and have that personal knowledge.
Let me ask you one question before we open it up for public comment. It'll be the same question I started with. Who is Protect Our Roseville Neighborhood? If you don't have facts on the ground, who in Roseville retained you?
I was retained by a group of citizens that at this time do not want their names
You
disclosed.
live in Roseville, but you don't have facts on the ground. Okay. All right, we'll open it up for public comment. Thank you, Mr. Mooney, for your time.
Steve Plaskett. I live in Paseo del Norte.
Welcome.
Our concern is the safety of our residents in Paseo del Norte on our private road that's privately maintained by us, that we pay for. We have children who play out there, adults who play with their children out there, who run across Camino Real, who we don't want to get hit by a car coming from the commercial development through our homeowners association. All it takes is one speeding motorist to go through and hit a child or an adult to have a very bad result. Now, I have seen cars from the CVS when driveway 2 and driveway 3, if you've read the packet, have a couple of cars stacked up who will cut through and go through the roundabout to get out into Pleasant Grove to go eastbound. So it's happening now, not to the extent that it will happen when the shopping center is completely developed, but it is still occurring. We are also going to lose the left turn out of driveway 3 onto Pleasant Grove Boulevard to go westbound to Fittiment to go north or south or continue westbound on Pleasant Grove. The staff recommendations are that we go through commercial development to try to get across 5 lanes on Fittiment to get into the far left turn lane to make a U-turn at that intersection, which is hazardous at best with all of the traffic at 50 miles an hour, or to go out driveway 2 and get into the left turn lane where the entrance to the church is and whenever the Safeway is built, and try to make a U-turn there. I tried to do that at 5 o'clock, and with the traffic on westbound Pleasant Grove, the stacking lane is not long enough, and it blocked lane number 1 all the way down to the second driveway for the church. Cars were coming by in lane 2 who I couldn't see and couldn't see me through the cars. So people in lane 1 are waving me on, thinking I'm going into the church parking lot when I'm trying to make a U-turn there. So I have to wait for lane 2 to clear. I make the U-turn, and the driver in lane 1 takes off thinking that I'm just going to stay in lane 2 when I'm trying to get into the left turn lane to go south on Fittiment. We almost get into an accident. So the U-turns that are recommended are hazardous to the residents. We suggested that a signal light be put at Paseo del Norte and Pleasant Grove Boulevard because there's a center divider there. So there's no way to get out of our development to go westbound, as I said. Staff has said that there's been no plan for a signal light there, and there's no money to put a signal light there. But that would ensure the safety of the people leaving the development and not getting into an accident or having to make a U-turn. Because once the gull wing goes in, as we're coming to our development, if we were to give up our easement through the commercial property, which we don't want to do, we don't think it's right that we have to do that, we're going to have to make U-turns to come back towards Paseo del Norte in order to get into our development, to go to our homes, or go down to the Camino Real entrance, which is next to the Escaton. Because Paseo del Norte Drive bifurcates the two halves of the development. Going on to the sound wall, when Paseo del Norte was built, we have a 35-foot setback from Pleasant Grove Boulevard, as well as a 7.5-foot sound wall. Now, the sound wall that staff's recommended is only 6 foot tall between Paseo del Norte and the proposed development, instead of a larger one. There's going to be just as much noise coming out of the commercial development as there is on Pleasant Grove Boulevard. Also, the parcel 3, since it's no longer under consideration, has no sound wall. So all of the noise and everything, half of the development is going to be bombarded by that. In looking at the Saxelby sound study, they had a sound meter at the far end of the driveway, probably attached to one of the bollards there so they didn't lose their expensive piece of equipment, which the elevation there, according to the plans, is 5 foot below the crown of the property. And also, it's at the end of our driveway where the 7.5-foot sound wall is on the opposite end. So I don't think the sound measurements were accurate. Also, in the traffic study, it talks about driveway 1, which is onto Fittyment by the CVS, driveway 2, which is by the CVS onto Pleasant Grove, and then driveway 3, which is closest to our development. But there's no mention anywhere in the traffic study about the traffic effects on Camino Real Way, about the number of cars, the number of daily trips, how many miles, so on and so forth. So there's several concerns that I've outlined to you from the residents about this project and how it's going to impact us, and that we don't feel that enough has been done to mitigate those circumstances.
You're very compelling, and I want to apologize to you. I didn't start the clock on time, so you've exceeded the 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, though, for your insight. And I need to I forgot also to poll the audience to see how many here are to comment on this item. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 6, 7. All right. Thank you for your comments. And what I'm going to do is, because we have a number of people commenting on this, again, please don't, very compelling. We understand the traffic and the driveways now. So if you have comments that are, new and fresh on that are appreciated, and we're going to do 3 minutes for each speaker from here on out. So thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Chris Campbell. I'm a fellow resident of Camino del Norte, and as well as one of the HOA board members. I am also the one who submitted the video evidence earlier today about the proposed new routes and the impact that they would have. Those videos were taken last week, Wednesday and Friday at about 4:15 p.m. on my way to pick up my children. I would like to second everything that Steve said about the traffic and the concerns and the studies that were done. I'd also like to add with the apologies, first time doing one of these, with the traffic study that was performed, that it was done last year when a lot of COVID policies were still in place, as well as work from home, which have not been fully lifted, nor was it done dealing with with our private road, and I believe it was done insufficiently. I would like to yield back the rest of my time to answer any questions that the board might have.
we'll get to questions later on, so.
Thank you very much.
Next.
Good afternoon or evening or whatever your preference is. My name is Nari Gawa. I am also a resident of the neighborhood. I also want to express concern twofold. Number one, the maintenance of the private road and having the potential extra traffic. I appreciate that it may seem that not a lot of traffic may go through there with that utility, but I assure you that even now there is traffic that goes to that area, and that we are concerned about the additional ramifications of that. Any consideration that can be given so that the community can preserve the safety of the area and still maintain that utility would be greatly appreciated. I also am willing to yield the rest of my time. Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, next. And let me ask, just so that we can capture accurately in the minutes, you don't have to do it now, but later on, if you'd fill out a yellow card that's, yellow slip of paper that's either at the end of the table there, staff table, or in front of you, would be appreciated. So that when the minutes are recorded, the names are captured correctly.
Okay, good evening. My name's Eric Kurth. I've been a resident in Paseo del Norte since 2009, so I'm one of the early residents. And things were pretty quiet back when I moved there. I was actually happy to have the CVS come. I think that's been a benefit to the neighborhood. But as has been mentioned, we have seen more traffic in recent times going through the neighborhood. And yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of reason to pass it, but we are seeing that some pretty fast-moving cars coming through. And as Steve and you've heard from others, I'm just worried as things back up, you know, with the grocery outlet, that we're going to see more and more traffic through. I have a 7-year-old son, and we play in that area. He rides bikes through there. So I do have concerns that there's going to be a lot more traffic. And I do drive south through Fitterman. I work in Sacramento every day. And I do imagine it's going to be rather difficult for me to get to work if I have to go down and make U-turns down through Sun City or try to work my way through a busy grocery parking lot. I can imagine that's going to add quite a bit of time to my commute. So that's a concern. And then also, I do want some assurances that there's not going to be a fast food restaurant on that parcel 3. It sounds like maybe that's a possibility. So I just want to make sure, there's been talk that was the original project and maybe there was kind of an end around that would be an eventuality. So I definitely don't want that. So I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Eric.
May I ask just how do you go to work right now? How do you get out on the Fitterman?
Right now I go down through the easement and I make a left turn onto Pleasant Grove. And then I make a left on the Fitterman from that light. So it sounds like I won't be able to do that pretty soon if this project proceeds as is. And also, I just would want to add too, I think the gate would be a nice solution. I mean, if we could still have access, that would be helpful. I know we talked about bollards as well, but if we could have a moving gate that would allow us access in and out, that would definitely be a good solution.
Thank you. Next. I saw some hands back there. I see, did we get all the hands over here? Okay.
Hi, my name is Diana Stump, and I want to also talk a little bit more about our community. So I don't know how much you guys know about our housing development there, but there really is no place for our children to play in their backyards. So that's, I think, one of the biggest concerns that I have is that, watching the kids play soccer out front with their parents and play baseball, we don't have a backyard where kids can actually go out and play. There's not enough room for those kids to play back there. So they really do play out in our front yards, and they ride bikes and stuff like that. So really the biggest concern that that I have is making sure that the kids are safe out there, dogs, families. There's constantly always interactions with individuals out there and within our community too, and keeping that community. Because this is our family. These are our family communities. And, my worry is that if there's a lot of traffic coming through our community, that there won't be that sense of residence and our sense of family anymore. So I do want to thank you guys for coming and driving through it, because we had heard that nobody was driving through it at other meetings and didn't really understand what we were talking about when we said that I think you said that the drive, even just the road is very narrow. You have cars that are on either side as a way of helping with the parking issue. And so there's not a lot of opportunity for cars to keep going up and down that road. And having any additional cars is going to be a challenge for us as a community. And we do have a 15-mile-an-hour zone. And so we are worried about people not honoring that as well. Thank you.
For your comments. I think we have a couple more people, if I remember, hands that went up.
Good evening. My name is Greg Robinson. I live on the very western edge of the neighborhood, so I'm closest to our soon-to-be-developed little retail pad. I would simply echo one particular point of Steve's presentation would be the height of that wall. Greg, I think I mentioned it in one of the neighborhood meetings. I think that 7.5 feet that would be consistent with the northern-facing wall along Pleasant Grove. Consistency both in design and in its look and function and height would be something that I would hope that we could consider, and I will yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Greg.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here again. My name is Veronica Vargas, and I am a representative from Grocery Outlet. I've had the pleasure to attend the several meetings that your staff has hosted to meet the neighborhoods, the HOA, and the developer. We are excited to be part of the community. I don't know if you know, but Grocery Outlet does not have a franchise. We actually are a partnership, and an owner, an independent operator, will be operating that grocery store. That person, that family, will be part of your community. Part of us coming into a community is that owner to be integrated and to live no more than 20 minutes from their store. So most likely they will live in the same community next door. So we take a lot of pride on being community friendly. They are involved in a lot of community service. I, for example, for 10 years, I served as a council member, and Grocery Outlet allowed me to do that, and several of other members in Grocery Outlet do community service as well. We take that very seriously, and it's embedded in the fabric of our organization. We will like to present solutions. I want to say one thing about Mr. Muniz and his firm. We are accustomed. Every time that we have a new project coming in, it seems friends of Cameron Parks or friends of Corning, California, or friends of Roseville come up last minute to just try to deviate a lot of work done by staff and the citizens, and sometimes it feels like a waste of resources of taxpayers. Not very fair. With that said, we would love to answer any questions that you may have about the operations of the store and who we are as a company, which actually we're a pretty awesome company. I may be a little biased, but I want to make sure that you know that we're here and willing to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Okay.
Hi, my name is Patty.
Patty?
Patty Brown.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to find out why only 300 feet? why do you only notify people 300 feet? It seems like a very small, minimal amount of people that you're going to notify of something that's going to have a huge impact on this community that's been there, came in before any of this was developed under the pretenses that they have a nice community to live in. Now they have all these additional impacts that is really hindering their lifestyles. And I don't think any of you, if you live there, would probably want that to happen to you. And to live 20 minutes away and not be within that 300 feet, I just don't think that's right or fair or a good assessment to come up with a decision that's going to affect so many other lives than 300 feet.
Thank you, Patty. One more.
Good evening. My name is James Adamick. I'm a resident of Paseo del Norte, and two questions I have is, one is, they say that the parcel 3 is not to be developed, yet I don't think they would commit to that in writing and say that we'll never ever develop that. So it seems like one of those things of we'll just turn the water up just a little bit until we get approval of this, and then we'll throw in parcel number 3 for approval later. It's rather disingenuous of them to claim that. The other issue I have is that on an average night, 12 cars from residents park in that cul-de-sac that's currently at issue. It's going to be subsumed by the project. Where are they going to park? No one has answered that. And I don't expect an answer from staff or from the council right now, but that's an issue that's going to be a problem going forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adamick? Adamick. I saw it. I saw the letter, but I just don't know how to pronounce it. Anyone else? All right, well, we'll close.
Here.
I'm Jatib Plaskett. I live in Paseo del Norte also.
What's your name?
My issue right now is we know that this development is going to go in some way. We have an unknown with the parcel that's not being developed right now, and we have across the street from us a Safeway and a McDonald's that are going to be coming in. And with all of those things in the future, wherever that future is, I think the traffic and the noise are being ignored. I know you can't predict the future, but you know that you're going to allow a Safeway. You know that there's going to be a McDonald's. Those are already gone to the Planning Commission. I'm sure they're going to be approved. So it's really sort of this subtle thing. Well, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and it's all going to be fine, but it's not going to be fine. That community is right directly on Pleasant Grove. I hear the traffic on Pleasant Grove from my living room and my bedroom all day long. Now, it's going to increase. It's going to increase when there's a Safeway. It's going to increase when grocery outlet goes in. It's going to increase with whatever businesses go in. You can't just say it's fine now, because it's not fine now. These things aren't really being addressed. The other issue, when the Safeway comes in, we're going to have the same traffic problem again. I have tried going out the exit of CVS on the west side of CVS to go across 5 lanes of Fitiment, where the speed limit is 50 miles an hour, to go up to the stoplight and make a U-turn to go southbound. It's nearly impossible. You could probably do it on a time of day when it's not morning commute time, it's not lunchtime, it's afternoon, but other than that, it's impossible. The only way that our residents in Paseo del Norte are going to be able to get out safely is to always make a right turn from Paseo del Norte, where our roundabout goes out, and go down to Sun City Boulevard to make a U-turn there. They say that's going to be reconstructed because we can't make a U-turn there. We have to go into Sun City Boulevard and do a little roundabout and then go back out onto Pleasant Grove. So we can only go safely west out of our complex onto Pleasant Grove. That's the only direction we can go safely. We've said this before. The solution for that, for the safety of our community, would be to put a stoplight right there at that exit. I know it wasn't in the plan, but maybe the planning was poor. I know it costs money, but if there comes to be an accident on any of these things, the city's going to be sued. It's just going to happen because the traffic is horrible there. That's just what I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Good comments. One last call before I close public comment. All right, we'll close public comment, and I'll invite Mr. Mooney, the appellant, if he has 3 minutes for any rebuttal.
Thank you, Don Mooney again. Not so much rebuttal, but I would like to, well, the one thing I would like to say with respect to the comment from the representative from Grocery Outlet about the timing of comments and such, this is when things come to the Planning Commission, this is the formal opportunity for citizens to come to the either Planning Commission or City Council. Citizens aren't involved in the planning process. They're not involved in the development of the application and things like that. It's only when it becomes it all comes together, and then there's a final document and a proposal for whether it be a notice of exemption or some type of environmental document or proposal, that it's time for the citizen involvement. And so I take issue a little bit with that somehow we should have been involved or the citizens should have been involved at a much earlier stage. If they have disputes and they want to petition their government for the redress of grievances, that's their First Amendment right, and the place to do it is before you folks or the Planning Commission, and that's what's been done. And with respect to the comments, especially like Steve's comments, and hope he addressed your question that you had for me. And the one thing I wanted to point out is for the comments that you did hear from the neighborhood and the members of the HOA, they really go to, it's based upon their personal knowledge, and that really goes to the substantial evidence as to whether or not the traffic study and the noise study were adequate to satisfy the requirements for the infill exemption. And I think from the comments that they've made today, especially the comments from Steve about the inadequacies of the noise study, not capturing the actual noise and how it differs from how their project was approved in the walls for their project, and the lack of a wall by Parcel 3, sound wall, and then the concerns with the traffic from the community about the safety and such, that it really takes us out of the infill exemption. It doesn't fall within those neat categories or those requirements for an infill exemption. And I'd just like you to take that under consideration when you're deliberating later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mooney. And I invite the applicant, Mr. Brenner, representing the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Two things I'd just like to focus on. One is the inconsistency in the staff report. I think anybody who reads it fairly realizes there may be some tweaks that could have been better, but in fair reading, it's very clear that Parcel 3 is not part of the project and is not going to be developed. But I proposed maybe, excuse me if I look like a millennial here, I happen to type it up on my phone. I suggested a condition that you either add to the tentative map, you add to the design review, wherever you think it's appropriate, that is a condition of approval. A developer acknowledges that Parcel 3 has no approvals for development of any kind and agrees that the site, any development on the site in the future will require the discretionary approval of the city and a public hearing before the Planning Commission and possibly a conditional use permit. That's what we think is going to happen anyway, but in case there's any question at all as to what we could do with that parcel and its developability, we can't do it without your approval. That's what I think that condition would do if staff finds a way to fit it in appropriately. The HOA, I drove through it today too, and I can't imagine anyone driving through there at this point in time unless they're coming from Eschaton. There's no, you have right turn driveways onto Pleasant Grove right from the, maybe they're curious, maybe they just want to see what's over there. I drove through because I was curious. But there's no benefit. You can't go left out of either driveway at the other end of the development. So I don't know why at this point people would be driving through unless they were getting to Eschaton. a stoplight down further I think that would encourage people to go in and go down there so they can turn left onto Pleasant Grove. Again, if we knew who the HOA was and who we could deal with, we can work on a number of matters. If the wall needs to be higher, okay, we can talk about that. We can talk about raising the wall more. We can talk about maybe even putting the wall in now for parcel 3 so that those homes don't have to look onto the shopping center. All conditioned upon resolving our differences between the appellants and the developer. But we're all ears. If somebody will talk to us and tell us what they want with a unified voice, we're more than happy to discuss it. I don't know that a gate is on the agenda. The problem with the gate, of course, is that it is very expensive. It has ongoing maintenance, and we don't have an easement onto there. It just doesn't. I don't see the nexus where the developer has to pay for the gate onto the adjacent property. So we're here to answer any other questions you may have. I think Sean, could you bring up the map for just a second, the third slide, I think it was, that showed you had it up for a minute. Somebody had it up. There it is. Yeah, I just want to note, we have 2 driveways, the grocery outlet field directly out to Pleasant Grove. You're going to get absolutely zero benefit from going down through Camino Real Way when you have 2 drive aisles, grocery outlets right in the center. You have one on the left and one on the right going on to Pleasant Grove with right turns. All you're going to get going the other way is a long road, as one of the council members referenced, going through a roundabout, around and out, and there's to be a right turn there. I think there's ways that we can discourage that more. But right now, it's a wide street. Somebody said it was narrow. It's not. I've seen a lot of residential streets, and that was built back in the days when it was pretty wide. And it has cars parked on both sides, and it's still a pretty wide street. So I think there's things you can do to discourage that. But again, we need to know who to talk to and how to
Mr. Trainer, I want to be fair and equitable because you had 3 minutes. You got a little extra there. I want to be fair and equitable to everyone. So I will close the public hearing. And there's been a lot of issues raised, so I'll ask the council for their questions. Councilman Alver, do you want to kick us off?
Going to be a little bit here.
No, I mean, I'm hoping you'll cover at least 12 of my comments,
All right.
questions.
So staff, I was wondering if you could just describe just briefly why the gull wing and taking away the potential left-hand turn, which I think you can make right now coming out of the north side of the property. Right, you can make a left-hand turn there, right?
Across from the church.
We're doing a gull wing, and this, I assume it's because of Safeway and all that. Could we just describe why that has to happen and why we couldn't do something different?
It's just because of the volume of traffic on Pleasant Grove. So when Paseo del Norte was built and subsequently CVS, that was close to the end of the world out there, right? Everything west of Fittimet hadn't been developed. We didn't have that kind of traffic out there. So it was decided at the time to allow that left out onto the arterial road, knowing that someday it was going to have to be closed as close as it was to Fittimet Road and with future development coming in. Subsequently, Safeway was approved. Safeway has a condition, and they're currently in with plans now to add that gull wing. So completely absent this project, the gull wing will be going in soon with the Safeway project. It was identified in both traffic studies for Safeway and for this project. And it was described by one of the HOA members just trying to get out and get into that left turn pocket and make a U-turn. You could do that in 2 steps, right? You can get out, you kind of have refuge in the left turn, and then you could wait and make a U-turn. Try making that all in one movement where you're just stuck out in the middle of the road and you're trying to make a left with cars coming both ways. It's the volume of traffic on Pleasant Grove. It needs to be closed off for safety reasons.
Okay. And I know we have Rayleigh's One, which I go to. I live out there. I go to Rayleigh's One frequently, and it has a similar problem where there's one. It's it's a goofy corner, you got to do the little jog to do a U-turn.
The other one we have is the Safeway on Wood Creek and Blue Oaks, coming out of the Safeway. We had to limit access from the Nugget on the other side of the street because
I
of
watch
that
people drive
driveway.
over that curb, yes.
Yeah.
Also, there were several comments about traffic and noise, and kind of sounded like accusations of these weren't done right and they weren't fairly done or whatever. Can you address how that study was done, and is there a chance they weren't done right or adequately for this project?
No, staff feels that traffic was analyzed adequately for the project. So from a global scale, from the major city infrastructure out there, the arterial roadways, the traffic signals, both projects, the Safeway side and this side, are consistent with what's in the city's traffic demand model, what's within our CIP. So we know that the overall infrastructure is adequate. What this traffic study did for this site was just look at the access to the site, the existing turn lanes out there, if they could accommodate it, and things like throat depth for the driveways. I think anybody that lives out there knows that Pleasant Grove and Fitiment is getting busier and busier by the day. We also know that will be alleviated with additional infrastructure on the west side of town. We're really kind of seeing a peak in traffic delays out there right now because of a little bit of a lack of infrastructure west of there. Roads like Westbrook Boulevard not connecting down to Baseline. That will alleviate quite a bit of traffic from that intersection and improve things in that area.
Was it traffic study? And I know a lot of this was planned long before our homes were there.
Yeah.
Just for these commercial areas and traffic and all that. But is there was a comment made about done last year during COVID or something. Is that an issue? Do we expect that would have been different if it was done now?
The traffic counts were taken in '22. We feel comfortable with them. We did go back and looked at traffic counts pre-COVID in, I believe, February of '20. These traffic counts were in excess of those traffic counts back in '20, so we felt like they were consistent with valid traffic counts. Staff felt comfortable with them. We did look pre and post-COVID, and we felt like they were the best traffic counts available.
Right. The sound wall on the east side of parcel 3 that's not there. There's comments about, can we put the sound wall there as well? I think I heard you guys say that was reasonable for you doing that. Is there any reason why that cannot be done? And then question of 6 feet versus 7.5 feet, because it sounds like 7.5 feet was requested.
So the reason we had 6 feet is the noise study, which was done by a certified acoustical analyst that has done numerous noise studies for projects throughout the city. We have many projects that rely on noise studies, so we're confident on that. It focused on the early part of the project when there was a fast food restaurant associated with the project. So a lot of the misconceptions are related to this fast food restaurant, which absolutely was part of the initial application. Once we had the traffic circulation study done, the noise study done, we looked at 3 or 4 different iterations. We looked at the proximity of the residential. We told the applicant, Mr. Traynor made the comment, I think Sean, it's in all the staff reports, that we didn't feel that we could make the findings for a conditional use permit. So the applicant, instead of going forward with a staff recommendation to not approve a conditional use permit, they withdrew that in January. So they pulled that out of the project. The noise analysis, there were noise impacts if you had a quick service restaurant on that parcel 3. There were not noise impacts spilling over into the residential neighborhood from the pad building or the grocery outlet, the 2 projects that are part of the design review project before you tonight. The wall came up because we have design guidelines. The citywide design guidelines call for masonry walls between to separate commercial developments from residential developments. And they talk about 6 feet. Now, we would go higher if you had a noise study that said, 7.5 feet mitigates the noise, 8 feet mitigates the noise. There is no noise impact. So no wall would still not have a noise impact. So we just went straight with the design guidelines, and that's where the 6 feet came from. So if the applicant was willing to build a 7.5-foot wall, there's nothing that would stop that. But quite frankly, we're just imposing the design guidelines and standards that we would normally, unless there was a compelling reason to have that wall taller.
There was a comment made about a 7.5-foot wall nearby. Where is that? And
I think they're talking about some walls that are along Pleasant Grove between the backyards. So the backyards of these residential units are the sensitive receptor areas, what CEQA would call a sensitive receptor. And that's typically where noise impacts need to be analyzed. And so if you look at some of the side-on units, as the homes go down Pleasant Grove, their yards are, they have exposure to Pleasant Grove. And so I'm sure that there was, at the time that project was approved, there was a noise study done, and they probably said 7.5 feet masonry wall mitigates the future road noise from these backyards. So I'm guessing that's most likely where that came from. That's why we have sound walls along our arterial roadways. With homes with backyards. It's masonry and not wood fences.
So I'm trying to, as a council member, we're possibly put a condition on this going 7.5 feet versus 6. Do you guys have a recommendation with a request coming from the community of 7.5? You're just saying it's not necessary sound-wise?
I think it's not necessary for sound mitigation purposes, but if there was some type of visual, I don't know what the cost of an extra 1.5 feet, we wouldn't have a concern.
Okay.
We just didn't feel like we had an evidence-based rationale to require more than the design guidelines call for.
And also, can you address why we only send notices to 300 feet from the edge of any development?
That's consistent with Public Resource Code, California Public Resource Code. So we're required, and in our zoning ordinance, the Roseville Municipal Code, public notices go out to all property owners and residents within 300 feet of a project boundary. We post we advertise the notice for hearings in the Roseville Press Tribune. We also have a relationship with the Roseville Coalition of Neighborhood Associations and put it on their website. Now, I will tell you that early on projects, we reach out and we notify communities. We try to notify communities. In this particular instance, we made sure to reach out to the Homeowners Association and said, hey, this project is going forward, and if you want to be on, the Homeowners Association was on the notice list. Mr. Plaskett, I think, is the president. I'm not sure if he lives within 300 feet or not, but we made sure
HOA was
notified. HOA was notified with the thought that, hey, they probably have an email blast to all their members and they can get this notice out to everybody. We also held 2 neighborhood meetings in the spring and offered up anybody that thinks they don't live within 300 feet that wants to be on the noticing list, sign up and we'll put you on the noticing list. Anybody that asks us to be on a notice list, we're not shy about noticing projects.
Okay. And I do know that in my coffee with councils, and there was tons of social media on Facebook and Nextdoor about it, so I believe the whole neighborhood got notified by then. There was a comment about where the 12 cars going to park, and I missed what that was. Do you guys know how to address that? What was that?
So on the commercial site, there's a paved, I would call it a cul-de-sac and not a roundabout. Some folks, it's round. It's on the commercial site. It is private property owned by the applicant. And apparently, folks from Paseo del Norte parked their cars there overnight. That circle, that cul-de-sac, is part of a temporary easement. So when Paseo del Norte was approved and these easements were put in place, there was a temporary easement with that cul-de-sac for emergency access vehicles. So if a fire truck needed to go down to the end, they could turn around and get out of Paseo del Norte. After that was put in, then these other driveways with CVS being built, these other driveways were built, and you didn't need the turnaround. So the easement language, and I think Mark can confirm if I get this wrong or correct me if I get this wrong. The easement language is it's a temporary easement that goes away with development of the commercial center. So anybody parking there is parking on private property without permission.
Got it.
So it's not posted for tow away. I don't believe Mr. Bollinger has any signage posting it for tow away, so he's not out there actively enforcing it. But I think in all of our response letters, our staff reports, Paseo del Norte meets the city's parking requirements. In fact, we looked in their CC&Rs. They have requirements that all their parking, like we typically require in these higher density, medium density projects, that the garages should be free and clear so that they can park their 2 cars in there. So we don't know, we've never had complaints, so we haven't had to, like we have in other instances that Councilmember Alvord knows about in your district, where we've had to go inspect any garages on that site. But so I don't know how that's enforced, but they meet and exceed the city's minimum parking requirements.
Okay, and then my last question.
I'm glad you're saving some for us. Okay.
If parcel 3 gets developed in the future, they want to come forward and develop the parcel 3 in the future, could you explain what that process will be?
Sure.
They don't just get a free sneak something in, right?
And I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I need to answer a couple other assertions that were made this evening. So the entitlements before the council tonight is a design review permit for the 2 buildings and a tentative parcel map for 3 parcels, parcels 1, 2, and parcel 3. So parcel 3 is covered under the CEQA exemption. So that map, that entitlement to allow the applicant to go subdivide the parcel into 3 parcels is covered with the CEQA infill exemption. So it fits within that, it fits within the criteria. As I mentioned, when the application was filed, there was a fast food restaurant part of it. We couldn't support it. The applicant withdrew it in late January, early February. So once those plans were modified and there was no longer a use on parcel 3, our city website was updated with the new plans. We held 2 community meetings with the HOA neighbors, fairly well attended, I will say, very well attended. And that parcel, development of that parcel, we made it clear at the time there was not a fast food restaurant. So there were no questions about a fast food restaurant at those meetings. There was no concern about a fast food restaurant because we were honest. We said we can't support this. When we went to the Planning Commission, there were no comments about a fast food restaurant on parcel 3. The appellant's letter for the Planning Commission didn't mention the fact that the staff report was confusing or the project description was confusing. The appeal doesn't mention that the project was confusing. The first I heard that our project description was confusing was the letter from yesterday. So we're very clear that parcel 3 is part of the parcel map that is before the council tonight. Development of parcel 3 is not before the council tonight. They do not have any legal right to ask the city for a building permit. If they submitted for a building permit on parcel 3, our front permit center would reject it. We would say, go back and get a design review permit. So they will need to get a design review permit, the exact same entitlement that they're applying for a grocery outlet and the pad building. So they would submit a building site plan, elevations, landscape plan, colors, material board, all of the information you have before you for grocery outlet and the pad building.
They would go through the whole process.
They would go through that whole process. Now, for this, typically design review permits go to our design committee, but when we know there is a lot of interest and concern, we bump those up to the Planning Commission, and so I would imagine that would go to Planning Commission. I don't believe at any future time our opinion on a fast food restaurant. I'm not sure how they could, our professional opinion. We just can't fathom how they could design that. That's not to say they can't apply for it, but I don't know how we could ever get our hands around making the findings to come before the Planning Commission to support it. So we're not saying that parcel 3 will never be developed. We're saying that they are not getting an entitlement with this action to develop parcel 3. They are getting an entitlement with this action to create parcel 3 as an individual parcel. And then once the design review permit would come through, that wall, if a wall or whatever, they have to meet the community design guidelines like every other project that we process. So again, I'm frankly making sure that a project description is clear and people understand it is my job. And so yesterday at 4 o'clock was the first time I was aware that anybody was confused by our project description.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Alvord. Councilwoman Rakucci, any questions?
Maybe just a couple things. It was a good opportunity to be able to drive there and see what it was like to drive. And also that you have a roundabout in your Paseo there, which slows traffic down. Doesn't stop traffic, but it slows traffic. And that's actually one of the calming effects that we use them in other parts of Roseville. I like the fact that next to grocery outlet, there's exits and go right. When I also drove down your center, there were cars parked on the side, which is pretty remarkable because a lot of areas don't allow parking. And so you not only have 2 cars in your garage, there is ability maybe for company or put a car in the front. And when I drove by in the easement area, there was about 6 cars, there. That, I don't know if that's more or less, but they weren't in front of their house or in the back or in their garage. When we're talking about sound walls, I would think if that was a possibility, if they're having a sound wall in front of grocery outlet, possibly they could go towards the third parcel also. I'd be interested in hearing more about that. I understand you're talking about concern about your children playing and about being hurt. I think that's a universal concern of all of us with our kids and grandkids on any of our streets. But I realize in your area it's just very uniquely different. You don't have backyards. You have almost no backyards. Really pretty, but if the kids want to play, I understand there's not a whole lot of places to play, so that is a concern that's different than in other areas that you really have to take them to the park or play outside and be with them because of just how your houses are made. And I was a little bit, I know would be, the homeowners would have to decide on this, but when I was reading all the information that I've had, I was a little bit concerned when they talk about putting bollards in. That's an opportunity. They can do what they want. But I'm real concerned about, if you're trying to protect people from going into your property, I'm afraid that you'll be able to get out, and also that emergency vehicles can get in there adequately. And even if you're thinking of that, I just would throw out the idea of breakaway barriers or crash barriers. Now I know the whole new discussion was all of a sudden there's a nice gate, but that might be something the homeowners have to figure out if that's something they maybe need in the future, and that may be, but that's a homeowner's decision on that. But I would also say that if you're looking at other things, I was looking at what Planning Commission said, like speed humps. Just go someplace where they have speed humps. That it's pretty much good things and bad things, and it's not always as nice or as easy to go over them. It'll just make another thing that you have to think about it. But before you ever do something like that, go drive on them, and you may not want to do that when you have it in your area, but seriously think about it. I think what's kind of hard is a lot of these areas here were planned many years ago, like you're getting a Safeway coming in soon. That was approved, I want to say, 15 or 20 years ago. And this parcel here had designated a community commercial designation so that it was going to happen. It just didn't see it. Now, you did see CVS, and I think it's a dentist. There's also, but now you're starting to see that. And some of this I'm happy because a lot of the people in your area had no places to go to the grocery store, no gas stations, nothing. And you're finally getting some of the things that our other specific plans have. And I think that's important. But we also have to make sure that as it goes in, that we look at some of the real concerns that you have and see how we can address them. But I am thankful that we have grocery outlet, we have Safeway, we have Nugget, we have stores out there when those people out there had nothing. And so it's growth brings good things, and it brings things that were challenging that we need to work through.
Councilmember Mendoza, any questions?
You know, I had 2 pages of notes. And one of the downsides of being on the end of the chain of questions is you
They answered.
don't leave you much to talk about. So traffic, U-turns, overflow, I think pretty much all of, thanks to Councilmember Albert and Councilwoman Rakucci, have asked my questions. So I'll just move to my 2 comments. 3 of the 5 of us here on council were on planning before we were elected onto this body. And I can tell you, and I'm sure people who have served on this council and served on planning outside of the council, that developers and people who are bringing projects forward are not often as friendly or willing to work and kind of come to the middle on projects. I will say I was very, very happy to see Mr. Mooney, his letter. It was very detailed, and that he came up and explained a lot of the items in there. Mr. Trainer, I want to thank you for your comments. But what I think was important here, and there's just one thing that I still kind of, I don't want to say struggle with, but I want to encourage the people who have come together to form the Protect Roseville Neighborhoods. Mr. Trainer mentioned a couple things, the raising of the wall and then the adding of the conditions on parcel 3 and some of the other things. And I'm not going to get into a debate with anybody here tonight of whether or not, that's enough or not enough, or where the giving and where the taking should stop and end, or start and stop. But because these residents are choosing to not be public, and that's known, that's their right, and I'm not, chastising them for that. But I would encourage through Mr. Mooney, or even through your HOA, to take an opportunity, because it does sound like Mr. Trainer is open to addressing a lot of the concerns that were brought up and echoed by numerous people here tonight. And I can tell you, and I'm sure some of my colleagues can as well, that's not always the case in development situations. So it's nice to see that, and I appreciate that the dialogue is open, because that's not always the case. But I would encourage through Mr. Mooney and through your HOA that maybe get together and try to find a way to open up that line of communications and see if you can get these items addressed. They seem to be willing. Now, again, it's not my job to sit here and tell you what they have to or what they don't have to do or how willing they're going to be. But Mr. Trainer did put a few things on record tonight, and Mr. Mooney did clarify a few things tonight. And as I read through my notes, it doesn't sound like on a couple of the items, not all of your items, but on a couple of the items, you're not that far away from maybe reaching some sort of an accord. And maybe when you reach some consensus on those, it will open up pathways for you on other items. So I just wanted to leave that comment out there, that the Protect Roseville Neighborhoods, I would encourage you, you don't have to disclose who you are, but through Mr. Mooney, possibly, to work with Mr. Trainer and Grocery Outlet to see if you can't cross a few of these items off your list. Because I think that would go a long way in maybe, gaining that trust or garnering that relationship, because they are, to what Grocery Outlet said, they are going to be your neighbors. They're not going away. So maybe this is a start to something better. But I just wanted to put that out there. I think it's a good opportunity for you guys. So thank you very much.
Well, I do have a few questions. So can we talk about condition 3? Would you explain condition 69 to me?
Sure. That condition was during the Planning Commission hearing, there was a desire, Mr. Plaskett, representing the HOA, indicated that there was a desire to do something more than a speed hump and signage to prevent cars from the commercial site accessing the private road. And so during the Planning Commission discussion, the planning commissioners spent quite a while working on this. We tried to come up with the best thing we could. And so condition 69 requires the applicant to work in good faith with the HOA that if they want to place bollards on the site, so bollards would have to be, I think Councilmember Rakucci talked about knockdown. It still has to have emergency access. So that interface between the residential and the commercial site still has to have some type of emergency vehicle access through there. But if you placed bollards that emergency vehicles could navigate through, and prevent vehicles from going either into the homeowner's private road or from the homeowner's private road into the commercial site, then there would be no concerns with cross traffic. That was something that some of the public comment supported at the Planning Commission hearing. So the Planning Commission basically said, let's craft a condition that requires the applicant to go work with the HOA. The HOA would have to relinquish their easement rights to do that, quite frankly, because if you put a barrier there, then they wouldn't be able to access the commercial site. So at the hearing, there was an agreement that the applicant would work in good faith. The HOA would have these discussions because we know that there are some members of that homeowners association that don't want that access removed. So it was just really a condition that kind of, let's put these two groups together and see if they can work on a solution.
Okay.
And if they can't work on a solution in a timely manner, then we have the speed bump and the signage to fall back on. So it wasn't something that we were going to hold up the development necessarily. So both sides needed to work fairly quickly with each other.
So my next question is, it was triggered by Chris Campbell's comments. So Paseo del Norte is a private road?
Or Camino Real Way, yes. Camino Real Way is the road, yes, that is, yeah.
It's a private, so
Private
I
street.
used to live
Private road.
in Heritage at Diamond Oaks, which were private roads, not maintained by the city, right? Was there ever a gate envisioned where that area is where they're currently parking at that end of?
No, I don't believe you can find any records of any gates.
Okay.
I mean, and the other
That
two
look of-
entrances aren't, there's no gating in that development.
So the question, would we analyze daily trips on a private road?
No, not typically. And I think as has been brought up here a few times tonight, it's just such a circuitous route that we didn't anticipate many trips going that way. So we did not take a look at it. And then we did have the discussions with these other options with bollards or, potentially the HOA putting in gates. I think from a staff level, we didn't disagree that the gates would be a nice amenity. We just couldn't find the nexus to put it on the developer. Because as you brought up, the subdivision's been out there for 15 years and it was mapped without a gate. The improvement plans didn't anticipate any gates. There was no electrical run for gates. So, frankly, it was designed that way before there was any homes built and anybody lived there. There was never gates anticipated, so there was always this kind of connectivity.
Yeah, I know that the homeowners in the Heritage at Diamond Oaks, one of the issues there was that folks young high schoolers had their driver's permit would cut through the neighborhood to get to that high school that's over 100 and some years old, and I think Councilwoman Rakucci graduated from. So condition 69, thank you for emphasizing, Mr. Mooney, we pride ourselves in outreach, and I think you heard tonight there was plenty of outreach, so I'm not sure what your comment was about the lateness of your comments because of a lack of outreach, so I'll just leave that at that. 2 neighborhood meetings. So, Mr. Bitter, can you explain again? Parcel 3 is covered by this, but not is created, but, yeah. Explain that one more time.
So parcel 3 is one of the 3 parcels on the tentative parcel map that is an entitlement. So that is one of the 2 entitlements.
Right.
Development of parcel 3 is not part of the design review permit. So in order to develop anything on parcel 3, a design review permit is required.
Okay.
And so, it's if you look at the 5 criteria for an infill exemption, subdividing that map fits all of those 5 criteria.
Okay. What is the distance required between signalized intersections?
about a quarter mile, 1,300 feet, something to that.
Is driveway 3, is driveway 3 within that window?
It's close. I can't remember exactly. I think it's 700 feet. It's definitely not within signal range.
Yeah.
It's too close to fit 'em.
That was, yeah, and so, okay, thanks. All right, last question. What is before us again tonight, Mr. Bitter?
So it's a design review permit for 2 buildings, the grocery outlet and the pad building on parcels 1 and 2, and then a tentative parcel map to create 3 parcels. Those are the 2 entitlements.
And I want to thank my colleagues for having driven the property. I know you do that, and thanks for your comments. Councilmember Mendoza, because, yeah, I mean, unless you see it and you experience it, right? And Chris, was it you that sent the videos? Thanks for that. I watched that, right?
I saw that too.
That was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that because, I know there are a number of intervening things, and I would never want to make a left-hand turn onto Pleasant Grove from either of those driveways. That's a challenge. So those are all my questions, all my comments, and I'll ask the city clerk if there's a, yes?
Can I just, the applicant passed me a note. I know we're not supposed to do that, but if the council would like to amend the condition on the wall, they are amenable to a 7.5-foot wall.
You just reminded me.
They are also amenable to, it would be redundant, but a condition on the design review permit that future development of parcel 3 will require a design review permit. I mean, that's the city law. That's required by the municipal code. It's city law that they need that anyway, so it's a little bit redundant to say they have to comply with the municipal code, but that's something that they've offered just to give anybody certainty that would be required.
Thank you, Mr. Bitter, because you just reminded me, and if I could ask our city attorney, we have a decision before us whether to grant or deny the appeal, right?
Right.
But there's a period of time in which additional conversations can take place. I mean, how does this post-decision tonight, something like that, I mean, and Mr. Trainer raised a number of things that he might be interested in discussing with the HOA about the access and other things like that.
So the decision you make tonight cements the conditions of approval.
Okay.
You approve them. If the applicant and the homeowner association want to get together and come to some terms and agreements, and the applicant wants to do some additional things, that's perfectly fine. But the conditions of approval you approve tonight is what the applicant is required to do.
Yeah.
And that's not going to come before you again.
But that does
unless
not
you continue this.
foreclose them coming and saying, we're going to amend that condition.
We can't add conditions tonight?
You can add conditions and amend them, and in addition to the ones that the applicant was willing to do, you'll need to strike reference to the QSR from condition 4 of the design review permit. So that should be an additional requirements. But yes, you can add and amend conditions and delete conditions tonight, but do keep in mind that the conditions have to be related to the design review permit or the tentative map. So, what was said before is there has to be a nexus, right? It has to be related to the permit, the entitlement that you are giving. So when you craft your conditions, they have to be related, and that's why there's some discussions about the gate and whether there's, the city is taking the position that we can't force the developer to place a gate on their property as a condition of their development to for the benefit of the homeowner association's easement, right? As an easement holder, they are required to maintain their own easement and enforce their own easement. It's their property right.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
So there's 3 conditions, I think, that I'm interested in discussing. So one is a 7.5-foot wall, including the east side of parcel 3. Adding clarifying logic about parcel 3, even though it's redundant, but Mr. Mooney was requesting that just so we can make that really clear so that the community's comfortable. And then the third thing I'd be interested in is at least a sign that says private property do not enter, which I think would alleviate most traffic. And for me, that's about where I want to stop. I don't think the gate's a good idea because I do know somebody's going to have to maintain that, and I doubt the HOA is going to want to do that. And a speed bump, you guys need to talk about that because I don't think a speed bump's ever gone in that people don't suddenly hate because it's going to affect you, nobody else. It'll be you driving over it all the time, and you're going to hate it. Been there, done that, and we've heard it before. So I don't want to mention speed bump as a condition just because you guys need to put that on yourself, I think. But those are three things I'm interested in.
So I would echo what Councilman Albert said, because the first two things he said were already mentioned by Mr. Trainer, and it sounds like there's some consensus that's agreeable. And the third item with the sign, we've done that in numerous projects where people, neighborhoods have asked us to do that, and that's not cost prohibitive. I mean, that's not going to hold anything up. So I think that's sensible.
Why don't we go over, where is the 7-foot, wall going to be? Because they talked about where the wall is with the sound wall for their project, but why would you bring that out? I'm kind of confused.
Thank you, Councilmember Cucci. I was going to ask Councilmember Aver that, you mean where we show the 6-foot wall, raising that to 7.5 feet?
In front of the residence only. The one down below grocery outlet, I don't think is important. I
No,
think
yeah, that-
in front of the residence, I think that was the request, is go from 6 to 7.5, and then do it at the east side of parcel 3, the right side of parcel 3.
So right there by the shops.
Parcel 3 is just a map. There's no,
Parcel 3 is not before you to place a condition on.
for the design,
There was
for the
two
design
items that
review
were-
permit.
There was two items that were brought up. One was they were suggesting putting a wall around parcel 3 for sound. The other one was the 6-foot wall that Councilman Albert is referencing being raised to 7 foot.
I saw a head nod from the developer on parcel 3, and so I thought that might be a good, because somebody requested, there's houses there too that are going to get noise impact, and if parcel 3 is never developed, they have noise impact, and so they want a wall also. That was my understanding of the public comment.
Let me just get clarification. So on what we're looking at,
Yes.
you're talking about the 6-foot wall that's east of the shops becoming a 7.5-foot wall?
Yes.
East?
Is that in front, is that the red line? Let's go to.
Right, red line, sorry. Yeah.
Red line on the right-hand side.
Right here, the 6-foot wall down here.
And if you're colorblind, then you can't see red. But anyway.
So it's the
that
bottom
one-
of the screen.
Yeah, bottom of the screen, between the residents and the shops. Is that the condition, Councilman Albert?
Can it go on parcel 3?
Well, that's not before us, is it?
I'm asking.
And there's that issue, I think, whether or not, the design of parcel 3 is not before you this evening. But in addition, there's also some easements that run along that area. There's a water line and some other things that could prevent a wall from being installed there. And then, in addition, we don't know what's going to be constructed on that parcel, so I think that was why staff was somewhat hesitant to put a wall there, because we really don't know what project's going to come before you, come before the planning commission, and what's going to be there.
But we could raise the other one absent parcel
Yes.
3.
Yes.
And the other thing I wanted to mention too, and I mentioned this to our community out there, I am not an expert on this stuff. I am absolutely not an expert. None of us are. This isn't our job to be experts on this. And Mr. Trainer and Mr. Mooney are probably biased a little bit in different directions. And so
Educated, let's call them educated.
So I have to rely on experts, and this is our team of experts over here that I rely on as a council member. And so they know the rules, they know the law, and they better not lead us the wrong direction, and they haven't so far. So I just let you know that I have to rely on, that's why I'm asking them a lot of questions. And I think, I'm just saying that for you so you understand where we're coming from, because we're not pretending to be experts up here.
And
Sorry, thank you.
one of the comments that Councilmember Albert made was the signage, and there is currently a condition, it's condition 10, and there's a sub-paragraph A that says the site shall be clearly signed to specify that Camino Real Way is a private road and access from the commercial site is not permitted for non-residents. So that's
It's
been a
there.
condition since the Planning Commission.
Can that be like private property do not enter? Or does that have to have all that wording on it, or?
Yeah, I mean, we'll work with the applicant to, it can be anything, yeah.
It just says a sign, it doesn't say the
It just
verb.
says a sign, making sure that it's clear that non-residents can't enter.
Okay.
So we have we're going to add two conditions?
Well, because the sign's already there, so yeah,
Right.
too.
So we're gonna do the
Scott, is
7.5-foot
Is that
wall.
what you were thinking? Because the sign's already mentioned.
Yes.
Sorry, Mayor. So.
So if
first
sign's already
two,
mentioned,
absent
that's-
the sign?
Clarification, there was a clarification of wording.
Right.
7.5-foot wall on parcel 2 between the residence and parcel 2. And then,
Clarifying that parcel 3 will require additional entitlements before development can occur.
Modifying condition 4 to eliminate the reference to QSR.
Oh, yeah, QSR.
Councilmember Akuchi, you good with this?
Yeah, that's good.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yeah, I'm good.
And Albert, you made them, so I hope you're fine with them. I'm good with them as well. So with that, we will entertain a motion on this. And you want to read us a motion?
Yes. So on item 8.1, the City Council will consider adopting Resolution Number 23-309, denying the appeal from the May 11, 2023 approval by the Planning Commission, adopting the 4 findings of fact, and approving the design review permit subject to 82 conditions of approval, and adopting the 3 findings of fact, and approving 3 tentative parcel maps subject to 48 conditions of approval. In addition, the amendments that were stipulated tonight, which was increase the wall from 6 feet to 7.5 feet, 7.5 feet on parcel 2. Clarification on parcel 3 will require additional requirements per the municipal code to be brought back to City Council for approval. Is that correct? Am I correct on that amendment?
It would be the Planning Commission.
Or Planning Commission. Thank you for the correction. And then lastly, to modify condition 4 to strike reference to QSR. Is that all of the conditions or amendments to those? Okay. All right, with that, if I can please have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor with a second. We'll start our roll call indicating that Vice Mayor Bernasconi is excused for tonight. Councilmember Albert?
Yes.
Councilman Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
And Mayor Haldeshelt.
Yes, and what we just had was a charrette tonight, so we had an awful lot of discussion about this, and I think very valuable discussion, and I appreciate the Neighborhood Association coming out tonight.
Healthy dialogue.
Dialogue.
All right, we are going to now open our second public comment period on non-agenda items, so anyone who would like to
I have a filled out a card because I arrived late and I didn't want
Could you come up to the podium so we can hear you?
Public comment?
About just a non-agenda item?
Yep.
agenda items?
Thank you.
Thank you, Board. My name is Alicia Watkins. The conservatives I know are not the same as the people I saw speak at the last City Council meeting. My conservative family and friends respect that freedom and justice for all means everyone. Mr. Mayor, you and I have fundamental differences in our beliefs, but we live in the USA where we're safe in discussing our differences without fear of reprisal from a totalitarian government. That has not stopped you from being attacked by the draconian movement plaguing our nation. We understand that your appearance at the Placer Pride event was not your endorsement of everything the queer community stands for, but rather your recognition that our community is a positive contributing part of the greater Roseville community. Families, clergy, medical staff, business owners, and law enforcement were there to celebrate the freedom protected by the Constitution of this great nation. However, all of this was overshadowed recently by the miasma of fascism invading the lives of innocent people. Vitriol and lies have been repeated at countless public meetings by recognized criminals, alleged parental rights groups, and dishonest religious figures. The same people who suddenly care about child trafficking trafficking want history books to censor teaching about slavery in residential schools. The same people falsely claiming queer mentors or predators are the ones who want children separated from mandated reporters and oppose teaching young kids about boundaries and consent. I have watched these people use the language of my own trauma to attack my queer community for too long. Most, if not all, of these adult bullies have never even confronted real groomers or put real pedophiles in prison. I have done these things. So when I tell you that I was 20 feet from the stage at the Placer Pride event and there was nothing untoward or inappropriate, the public knows that this statement comes from someone who has a heightened radar for red flags. If survivors like me and the various Roseville police officers who were stationed inside that event saw nothing harmful, then any intelligent person would know to believe us over the same people who are promoting stochastic terrorism. Mr. Mayor, I am sorry that you are the latest conservative to be thrown under the bus for the perceived crime of acknowledging all your constituents. The bullying from this hateful faction within the GOP is disgusting. I recognize that these extremists are not for family values or small government, but rather fascist values and a smothering government. Obviously, these people don't pay attention to history, or they would realize that their flawed, toxic belief system never lasts and never wins. In closing, to the man who commented publicly about what the black and brown stripes on the pride flag mean, well, they represent black and brown people who are human beings with dreams, rights, just like you and I. Black lives matter. Love wins. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else have public comment on non-agenda items? All right. Thank you. Almost City Manager.
No further reports, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. City Attorney.
Nothing from me, thank you.
All right. I will invite Councilwoman Rakucci to lead us off in council
Okay.
comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. Recently, I went to one of my meetings, and it's my Northern California Water Association, and I think the main event was going over the legislation that's current and some of the information that may be going into two-year bills instead of right now, and which ones to really hone in on more than others. So it was a good meeting. Today, just before this meeting, I went to the Associated Builders and Contractors of Northern California, and they had an open house on Roseville Road. And the reason I'm going to say Roseville Road, it sounds like it's in Roseville. Roseville Road is in Roseville for about like a mile, and there's probably like 6 or 8 miles in Sacramento, so it's in Sacramento. But it was really nice that it's an open house because they're building an area for training young people in skills in carpentry, construction, electrical, fire sprinklers, installing cement. And it's like a 4 to 5 year program, and they and mentoring these students along with someone who's a sponsor for them. And they also are working with veterans to be part of it. And so it was quite interesting. It was nice to be there. And so I did that. But it's a train for future skill working force in our area. And also something that's coming up next week is the USA Softball Girls Softball Tournament. It's for ages 12, 14, 16, and 18. They're going to have on August 1st at 7 o'clock at Wood Creek High School just the opening ceremony for it, and then it'll be a series of games in different high schools, not only in Roseville, many times it's even in Lincoln as well. And there's over 70 teams, and so it's really quite exciting. We've been there before, council members, and to see so many people coming here to the city of Roseville and being excited about playing girls softball. So it's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to that. I think some other people got invited, so we'll be there too.
Councilmember Mendoza.
The Placer County Local Agency Formation Commission, or LAFCO, met last week, and there was nothing of substance pertaining to Roseville that needs to be reported out on. Just a reminder that in less than 2 weeks, National Night Out will be among us here on August 1st.
The 40th.
40th, yes.
Yeah.
40th anniversary of that. If you haven't already made plans, it's still time to do it. Your neighborhood associations through Arcona probably already have plans. They do great work over every year that I've gone to them in the past years. And our law enforcement partners and fire and all of our city staff will be out there doing all the great stuff that they do. So I encourage you to find a local park or pair up with your neighborhood association and participate in the festivities in 13 days from today. And lastly, just want to give a shout out to a new local business that opened up on Sunrise Boulevard, 390 Sunrise Boulevard, in the Incredible John's Universe parking lot. It's called Juniors. It took the place of the old Fahrenheit 250, and before that it was a litany of other businesses. I don't know what's wrong with that particular that area, but it's cursed, so I hope that Juniors does well. I had the opportunity to go to the soft opening last week, and they do have a really good bill of fare there, nice welcoming environment. So if you fancy yourself looking for a place to eat out this weekend, I would encourage you to go stop by Juniors at 390 Sunrise. And other than that, I have nothing else to report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Alvord.
I wanted to just report out that WAPMA, the Western Placer Waste Management Authority, is still well underway with construction for our new materials recovery facility, $120 million facility, and it's kind of cool seeing that finally happen. I got to join a big group for a SALC grant, SALC. It's to help with our agricultural economy. And I know, one of the nice things a lot of people talk about when they move to Roseville and other cities, they talk about how they can pretty much drive 10 minutes and be in the middle of nowhere. And I know that my wife and I have been enjoying our trails. We did a 20-miler a few weeks ago and a 10-miler 2 days ago. And we've very much been enjoying the trails, and it is kind of neat. You can get out and kind of be in the middle of nowhere, and some places not see homes around you, and it's very nice. But this Ag Economy grant is to try to help us save some of these big open space areas throughout our county, because once they're gone forever. And so trying to help them be viable and keep the economy going. And then I also attended 2 neighborhood association meetings, Creekview and Solaire, and they're going strong and making improvements in their community. I know the city's coming along helping with issues that they've been having. And then also just announced that next Tuesday is the last downtown Tuesday nights for the year. So I encourage you to come out. I've been going to most of them. The bands are great this year. Fantastic. They're usually great anyway. But encourage you to come out. Hopefully the weather won't be too warm, but it does cool off nicely when the bands start in the evening. So right here down on Vernon Street. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvord. We haven't met since June 21st, so I should feel like I should have more to mention. But I think the most significant thing, there are 2 really significant things, is the Capitol Corridor's 3rd track, which is in crossing historic Old Town, got $25 million in state funding from the California Transportation Commission. City Manager Casey and I were amongst a group of people who traveled into the canyons and up to Hellhole and French Meadow and had a conversation with other leaders in the region about protecting our open space. We miss Vice Mayor Bernasconi, but we look forward to her coming back and being with us at our August 2nd meeting. So.
Should be rested, ready to go.
Yep.
Yeah. With that, we'll adjourn till August 2nd. Thank you.